सो गाइस, अगर आप भी मॉक इंटरव्यू देना चाहते हैं तो वीडियो के डिस्क्रिप्शन में आपको एक लिंक मिलेगा जहाँ पे आपको एक गूगल फॉर्म को जाके फिल करना है एंड आपका इंटरव्यू स्केड्यूल हो जाएगा। एंड इसके अलावा अगर आपको कोई भी कोर्स जावा, पाइथन, जावास्क्रिप्ट, इसके अंदर अगर आपको कोई भी कोर्स देखना है तो प्लीज़ आप यूट्यूब पे जाके ट्राई पे विजिट कर सकते हैं। ओके, एंड लेट्स बैक टू द इंटरव्यू।
So just tell me about your past experience, like your work experience, about yourself.
Sure. So I'll give a brief introduction about myself. So I have completed my graduation in a bachelor's in computer application, and starting from BC, I developed my interest in computer science. I always wanted to code. Currently I'm working as a full stack engineer at jobs.com. Prior to that, I was working as an intern with the server-side team at Bobble, where I got to write some backend APIs. I got the gist of how the backend system works. But my inclination was towards front-end. So here at Jobs, I worked on system where we were delivering edtech products and we were supporting in-house infrastructures. So most of the work that I've done is in front-end, and the back-end languages that I've used, I worked on PHP and Golang.
Okay, you worked on PHP and Golang in a backend. Okay.
Yes.
So how much you rate yourself in JavaScript or React.js and React.js? Out of 10 or out of 5?
Right. So if I'll talk about JavaScript, the JavaScript is pretty wide. I still get to learn a lot of new things in terms of syntactical sugars and writing syntaxes. So I'll rate myself around 7. Okay. And same goes with the React.js. Currently it is upgrading and we are expecting a React 19 version at the end of this year. So I'll rate myself 7 up in that also.
Okay, you are saying 7 in both, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we are also covered some HTML, CSS part in that interview. Okay, but later on. So we can start with JavaScript. Are you comfortable with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So in JavaScript, is JavaScript single-threaded or multi-threaded?
So JavaScript is a single-threaded programming language. It doesn't support multi-threading.
It doesn't support multi-threading. Okay. So how we can achieve that?
We have service workers.
Okay.
We have asynchronous programming, web APIs, which we can utilize. We can leverage those things to do multiple tasks like uploading file and handling multiple parallel computations with the help of service workers. So this is what we can leverage.
So can you say about some examples about service workers?
Service worker, like if I think I'll take a very common example. Like if I have to do some computation related to file upload or scanning PDF, so what I'll do is I'll allot, as soon as a file gets uploaded to my server or as I get something on my front end, I'll allocate a service worker. So what it will do, it will not take my compute heavy resources, and the tasks that I can do to read out of that file, to write on that file, can be done by service worker.
Okay. So set timeout and set interval, they are worked asynchronously or synchronously?
So set timeout and set interval are the part of web API, browser web API, and they work asynchronously.
Okay. So suppose if I run a thread, JavaScript is single threaded, you as mentioned. Okay. So if I run a function in set timeout after 5 seconds, okay, and I am calling 10 functions before that. So as you mentioned, like if I am calling API in first 3 function and 4 function, it will take time. So of course, and the set timeout function will run after 2 or 3 seconds. So you are saying it will run parallelly, or is there any glitch between them?
So what JavaScript engine does is there is a macro queue and a micro queue.
Okay.
So priority is given to the micro queue. Set timeout comes under the macro queue. So despite APIs taking more time, they will be given priority. They will be run first, but set timeout after them. So macro queue and micro queue come into the picture in asynchronous tasks.
Okay. So let's talk about hoisting. What is hoisting in JavaScript?
So hoisting is a phenomena. It's a programming phenomena in JavaScript in which what happens when execution context is created, what JavaScript engine does, it assigns memory to all the variables.
Okay.
In terms of, so what it does, it will place placeholders. If it is a primitive value, it will place undefined, and if it is a function, it will keep that function definition as it is. And in the execution phase, it starts running. So hoisting happens because of this. Whenever you have declared a function, and if you try to call it before declaring it, it will still run.
Okay. So is there any way how we can stop the hosting phenomena in JavaScript?
We can use let and const in ES6. You can use let and const. Function by default are hosted. You can take arrow functions.
Okay.
So by this way you can take control over that.
Okay. So why we are using use strict in JavaScript? Sometimes we add use strict on the header of JavaScript before running the script.
Right. So JavaScript is a very loosely typed language. It allow you to declare variable, but you cannot define its type. All of them things are done during the runtime. But if you want to save your time in terms of solving bugs and error, if you want some strictness while typing the code, if you don't want undeclared, or if you want a string to get assigned only string values and number to get assigned only number value, so this is what can we do using use strict mode. It allows type checking kind of thing.
Okay. Okay. And what is the difference between let, where and const? Why we are developed let and const after where?
Yeah, so let and const were developed in the ES6 when ES6 was introduced. Where was prior to that? It was there before let and const. So where was we used where, let and const to declare variables, but they are different in terms of their scope and how they perform in respect to their context. Where is a globally declared variable. It has global scope, but later on it creates problem when you use it inside functions. You have to get specific constant. You have to use this. It creates a problem, and writing code become little tricky. But with let and const, they are block scope. So what you can do is you can have a let declared inside a function, which cannot be accessed out of the function. But for the same variable, if you declared a variable with a var, it can be accessed outside the function.
Okay.
So this and const, as the name suggests, cannot be reinitialized. You can change it, but it cannot be reinitialized. This is the major difference.
So you are saying we can change the value of const?
Yeah, like if you have a const array, you cannot reassign it, but you can change the values in the array.
Yes. Okay. So if there are any, you are talking about arrays. So can you please give some array methods if you know?
Sure. Map is what mostly we use. Map filter. We have reduce. We have sort to sort the array. Although we have to pass a custom function in that. We have at index of find index. These are the some. So what we can do is, if I have an array initialized like a is equals to square bracket 1 2 3 4, I can reassign it. A is equals to empty set of bracket. It will do the job. It will empty the array.
Okay. So we have destructuring of array, right? What is that?
Right. Destructuring is a syntactical sugar that was introduced in ES6. What we can do is, instead of declaring multiple variables and then assigning value to them, we can what we can do, we can take out those value in a single line. Like you have an object A, B, C, D. So what you can do is, instead of taking every individual value in a separate variable constant, you can just assign const curly bracket and the name of the keys that you want to get, and it will do the job.
Okay, so it will work index wise or key wise. Like suppose if I don't want to declare the keys, I just declare the variables and assign that to the array. Okay, so how they will automatically get the values?
So if you are destructuring an array, so it will take if you have 5 elements in the array and you are destructuring 3 elements at a time, so it will take first, second, third with the indexes, respective index value.
Respect index value. Okay, great. Okay, so Abhishek, what is callback hell and what is the callback function?
Hell.
Both.
Right. So callback function is a way to perform a task after you have completed another task. If you can pass a function inside a function, like we do in map filter, and we talk about callback help. Callback help is a version of callbacks, like calling multiple callbacks. When you do if you want to do multiple set timeout, you want to do I have 5 tasks that I want to, if I'm making, I'll take an example of tea making. So if I have to take the pen, light the gas stove, and do the other things, so I have to do them task one by one.
Okay.
So for that I'll write callbacks. If I've put the stove, then I'll light the stove, and then I'll pour some water, I'll tea. So writing this in a normal fashion way, what happens becomes very lengthy and readability goes away of the
Okay.
code. So this is known as
So
callback.
JavaScript provides that functionality, like you can do the things step by step. First step will complete, then second step, then third step, like that. Okay.
You have async await to do
Yes.
the same thing, but it's become more readable.
Okay. So what are promises in JavaScript? How they
Promises
work?
are the objects which represent the eventual completion of an asynchronous task.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens, like if you are doing any asynchronous task, a very common example of fetching API or
Okay.
using copy function of the window browser object, it returns a promise. So you can, what promise does, it has the value, either it gets resolved or rejected. So you can consume that promise with the help of .10 or await.
Okay, what are the stages of promise? There is a stages, right, in promise.
So
Yes.
whenever you create a new promise, it is initially it is in the pending state, then it gets fulfilled or rejected. These are the three major states of a promise.
Okay. So Abhishek, what promise actually returns? What data type it returns? Like boolean, string. What promise returns after complete their function? Fulfill. You mentioned the stage. Yeah.
I've not got a chance to exactly go through that deep, but I believe this promise is an object, is a it
Right.
returns, I believe.
Promise return the object. Then you can check that what is the current stage and what's the value, what's the data in the promise, right? Okay, no issue. Okay, so as we are talking about the promise, what's the difference between async and await, or how we can use it both at a time?
So, like for the callbacks, we have .10 method. If you don't want to use .10, you can use async await. But there's a basic programmatical difference in that. .10 and async await, what it does is it will not ensure the eventual completion. You can use .10 in the two tasks, but
Okay.
like if I'm using a set timeout in one .10 and another set time and I have same timing. So even though the shorter one is finished first, it will not get executed until the in a very simple way I can say that step by step doing work is achievable with async await, but not with the .10 method. There's this kind of we can say there's a glitch. Both are ways to consume promises, .10 and async await. Async await is a new syntactical way to handle promises, but they have a basic programming difference that you cannot control your steps with .10, but you can with async await. Async await only will work once one of the tasks is complete, then only the another await will work.
Okay. So as we are talking about async await, there is a fetch API, right, in JavaScript.
Right.
What they will do?
Fetch is used to handle calls. If you want to make a post call or if you want to make a get call, it is provided by JavaScript itself browser. It takes a URL and then you get a response out of it. Fetch also returns a promise, so we handle it using await, and then we convert that response to a JSON, because converting this JSON response also returns a promise. Then we can see it in the console.
Okay. So suppose there is any error in your API. The API server returns, the backend server of API returns the 500 internal server error. So how you will handle it?
So when it will be in the response object, fetch API will return, but we will not get confirmation whether the data was right or wrong. So we will take the response. We have .ok in the response object. So we will check, and we also have a couple of more properties like status. What was the status return of the API?
Okay,
so
status code.
I have the complete REST object, so I can check if it was okay or not. Okay property, and what was the status, whether it was a 200 or 400x or 500 server error.
Okay, what if when you are calling the API, okay, with your code, with your JavaScript code, and the code has some problem, or is there anything with API which is gone wrong, then how you will handle it?
I believe with the try catch.
Yeah, with the try catch block, you can handle it. Yeah, right. I just want to know that answer. Okay, not an issue. Okay, so okay, let's talk about debounce. Have you worked with on? Yeah, what is debounce?
I have not implemented debouncing as of now, but I know the concept around it. It is like if you don't want to call or want to hit a resource on every input or any kind of a change, if you want to save your bandwidth, network bandwidth. So that's what we do. Debouncing, like we see on a very common example, like on Flipkart and Amazon, there's a slight gap between two calls of them. If you are searching a product, it will give you a short span of time to write the entire name. Like one call, and after there's a difference of like 200-300 milliseconds in between the calls. This technique is called debouncing.
Okay, yeah, good. Okay, so there is a after debounce, okay, so there is a thing like course policy. Okay,
Right.
so sometimes user get course policy error in their browser, or the JavaScript developer get the course policy error because user will not go to inspect element, right? So you guys go to inspect element, check that. So what's that error and how we can resolve it?
So course is a cross origin access policy, if I'm not wrong. And what it does, browser by default has a security that you cannot call a different server. You cannot request resources from a different server. You cannot hit to a different endpoint API until and unless you have specified it on the backend or on the front end. Like we have like an express, or like in PHP we have allow access headers. We have to mention that. We have to provide the value that allowing these course error, the two different servers can request resources in between them. So by providing these headers, by using these headers, which are technical related, like we have different kind of way to do it in Express and a different way to do it in PHP.
Okay,
We can resolve this issue.
okay. So let's talk about some more JavaScript question. Then we will move to output based question. Okay.
Right.
So okay. So there is a some ES6 functions, you can explain advanced JavaScript functions, right?
So like in ES6, there was we have arrow functions. Arrow functions are a very important part of it, and some newly introduced array methods was to be spliced. The original slice method used to mutate the original array, but to be sliced, we don't use. It does not mutate the original array, and I'm missing out on some right now.
Okay. No issue. Okay. So I'm just okay. So let's okay. What is higher order functions?
Higher order functions are a way where we can use functions as a variable, which we can pass function like a parameter to a variable to another function, and we can also return a function from another function. So this is what higher order functions are.
Okay. So I think you also used double equal and triple equal, right, in JavaScript. What is the difference between both of them?
So double equal is just for equality check, but when you want to check also the type, strict checking, we use triple equal.
When we are checking about the data type also, right?
Type.
Okay. So I'm pasting on a question, okay? And you can open your VS Code, or if you have any online compiler, so you can share your screen.
Sure, sir.
Yeah.
I hope my screen is visible.
Yeah, it's visible now. Okay. So Abhishek, I have pasted the function in a chat. Okay. So what is the output of this function?
So as I can see, we have a variable x which is assigned 10, and we are calling a function test, and we are trying to log the value of x, but we have already x which is assigned here as 10. So what I think is happened that this let will shadow this variable, and we will get a console log 10, but that console log I believe will be this one.
Okay, can you please run that program?
Sure.
Yeah, let's see. Okay, it's showing undefined. Okay, you got it, the answer? Why it's showing undefined? Okay, you are talking about the scopes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can explain?
We have a 10 here. This function will behave like either we are like a console log x will try to find x in this scope.
Yes.
So it will get x whereas 10.
but
But-
it's after declaring the console log, right? That is
So
why it's
what-
showing the defined. Yeah.
Right, undefined.
Yeah. Okay, not an issue. Okay, I am sharing another question. Okay, you have idea about closures?
Yes.
Yeah, what are they?
Closures are a way in which a function remember its parent lexical environment.
Mm-hmm.
It remembers all the variables that was there in the parent's parent scope, even after the execution.
Okay, even after the execution. Okay, so I think you have not any problem with that question or answer it. Okay, please check this.
Sure.
Yeah. What is the
So
output
we
of this function?
have an outer function, which is we are returning this inner function from it. So console log x, and x is 5.
Yeah, right.
So what happened when we call this outer function?
Hmm.
This complete function will get assigned to inner,
Okay.
and when inner is called,
Hmm.
this part of the block will run. Console log x will try to find x, but it is not here.
Hmm.
Then it will go to its parent
Okay.
scope, and there it will find x.
Hmm.
So I believe this will print 5.
Yeah, right. So please run this.
Sure.
Yeah, your answer is correct. It will print the 5. As you mentioned, the what closure exactly work in the JavaScript. Yeah, it will.
Print 5.
Yeah, good, very good. Okay, so there is some. I will paste you some syntax. Just need to explain how they will work when we include this in JavaScript. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm adding this. Yes. Okay, so there are two scripts I have added in HTML browsing, or you can say HTML code. So there is a differ and async. So how they will work with HTML input or output? Like
So-
input output means like when we render the UI or the DOM. So how that JavaScript works?
Right.
Hmm.
Both are the way to fetch a script from the server.
Right.
But what happened that after the script is fetched, then the execution will start.
Mm-hmm.
And in the async, I believe, and in the defer, what happens is I'm actually getting confused because I know both of them works to fetch API, but once only work after the script has fetched, and then execution will start. But in one of them, what happens that if script is fetched, parallel execution will start. As soon as the script is fetched, will start executing parallelly, and in once the script is fetched, only then after execution will start.
Okay.
So I believe with the differ it will that, and in async.
Okay, so what is better according to you when you have include some script in your HTML? So what is better, or it's depend on the function calling which is defined in that script?
Yeah, there are a lot of things that goes, like obviously what kind of script and what is the execution of that script is. But I think I will choose a differ, because once I'll have the complete script, only then execution will start, so it will handle all of the edge cases and I'll not run into some issues.
Okay,
Any corner case.
but I think it will take more load
Yeah.
rather than async, right? Yeah. Okay.
yeah, I have to do that trade-off.
Right. So there is a way to solve that loading problem, right? Yeah. Okay. So I'm pasting another question, the last one. Okay. So what is the output of this question? This console log?
Sure. So here we have 0.1, which is being added to 0.2.
And please
And-
mention the types of that data types of that value.
Okay. So we don't have any specific strict data type in JavaScript for handling floating values.
Right.
So it will be of type number, and this will be also, so it will get added. But I'm not sure how the precedence work in JavaScript. If I start to calculate this function from left to right, So it will add up to 0.3, and then it will strictly check whether these two values are of same type and they have same value.
Right.
So I think it will console log true.
Okay. Try to run this. And if you wanna make sure again, so before run that, so you can
I'm just
also
not
check this.
exactly sure about the precedent, whether it will start from right to left.
Preceding,
or-
you are not confirm about that, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Just try to run this.
But I'm taking a idea that it will start execution from left to right. First, this expression will get solved, and whatever the result we get here, when it will get compared to this. So I'll stick to my answer.
Okay.
Let's see.
Okay. Please run this.
It says false.
False. Okay, so I'm just explaining the reason, because
Right.
0.1 and 0.2 according to our JavaScript standard will not return exactly 0.3. It will return 0.333 or something numbers.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
That is why it is not the preceding issue. It will obviously calculate from left to right. Okay, or the next level is board mass. So we have not included the board mass rule here. We are not included any square bracket or bracket here. Okay, so about that there is a 0.1 and 0.2 will plus add, and the answer will be 0.3333. Okay, and when we
Right.
have the triple equal to compare that, so it will compare exact value and also the data type of that value. So that's
Right.
why it is returning the false. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Okay. Not an issue. Okay, Abhishek. About that JavaScript we have done. Okay, let's move to React.js. You can stop your sharing now. No issue.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So why we are using the React.js? Or just another question also, like what is React.js? Is it a library or a framework?
So React.js is a JavaScript library. It is
Okay.
used for building UIs. It was developed by Meta, and recently it has released version. We are expecting a version 19 out of it. We use it to make it JavaScript frontend.
Okay. And why we are using React.js over AngularJS?
So both of them works differently. Like in Angular, you have two-way bindings. There are its core set of features, but React has there are issues like you have to strictly use TypeScript, but that is not with the case React.js. You can also work with TypeScript as well as JavaScript. Writing code becomes easier. There are a lot of resources available. Documentation is one of the few things which I believe is better in compared to Angular's. And I'm not sure about the more technical points here. Why Angular? Because both of them have their own set of features. But one-way binding of data and two-way binding is something that I know that at this point of time, that how data is being handled in both of them.
Okay. So there is a render function in in React.js, right?
Right.
So how they work and what exactly they do?
So render function was a part of class-based component. It was used when functional components were not introduced.
Okay, it will only render class-based components.
The render works only under class component, right?
Okay.
If for a functional component we use return, we have states and other kind of thing. But if you want to use render method, it will have to declare a component as class-based component. It will extend React, and if you have some state in them, it will basically return the JX as written inside the render function.
And JSX will render by that render function
Method.
right?
Yeah.
So it's not depend on class base, but it is right, like we are directly render the function with the render method in a class based component, but when we are render the functional component, we are using the return. And in the main application page, main.js or app.js, which you are created with for the home application, okay, home page for the application, so they will render here. Okay, let's talk about JSX. So what is JSX exactly, and full form of all for this also?
JSX stands for JavaScript XML. It is syntax in HTML like syntax, which we used in React to write our component. It returns. So we use JavaScript in with the help of HTML. So JSX is a syntax. It's an JavaScript XML, I believe, and we can write JavaScript along with HTML.
Okay, so but we can also write in a HTML also, like we can write on click method and then we can write the JavaScript function. So what's the difference between them?
So like how React handles its components is different.
Okay.
These all events are being handled, say like synthetic events. React have its own set of wrapper over the events.
Okay.
Like you can call raw JavaScript functions. It allows you.
Okay.
But as apart from writing that, React gives you a style of writing things. It has its own way of writing things. So we can use direct JavaScript method, but it might not affect or work as expected, because React have its own way of doing things.
Okay.
Like if you are using on-click and other event handler.
Okay. So there is a two or more than two maybe the ways of saving the file in React JS application with the different extensions, right?
We use .js, .jsx,
So
.jsx.
Is there any difference between them, or it will work normally what they are?
You can use, if you're not using explicitly TypeScript, you can save your component with .js or JSX. What JSX does, it gives you IntelliSense auto completion of the text.
Okay. So let's talk about the hooks in React.js.
Right.
Okay. So what the use effect?
So for handling, we cannot declare a direct variable in React because React does reconciliation and it needs to know what variable gets changed. So we use effect there. If you want to have any kind of variable in React application, we use use effect. I said use state for that, and use state gives us returns array that we can destructure. It gives you a variable and a setter function, which you can use to manipulate the state value.
Okay. And use of use effect?
Use of use effect, it is used to handle tasks which are out of the scope of React, like talking to local storage, calling an API, handling these kind of things, which I am missing the term, what we call side effects. Yes, side effect. For handling side effects, we use use effect hook.
Okay. So is there any way like we can define the use effect without any condition or without any dependency?
Yes, use effect. What use effect function does is it has a dependency array, so it's optional. But what that will do, it will every time your application will be rendered, that use effect will call itself. It will run first, so it can create problem of memory leakage and might bloat the memory, might fully consume the memory.
Okay.
So you can use it, but it is not a standard convention to use it without a dependency array.
Okay. So suppose like we have use effect array, okay, and we want to call an API. Right. So how, like, what is the structure you can type in your screen?
I'll try to type it in the comment box.
Please. Like how we can, just a simple API calling function, and you are just about to call that in a use effect when we render the or load the page on browser.
So I'm writing that syntax.
Okay.
So this will be the syntax. What I'll do is I'll just change it little bit. I'll inside that use effect callback function. I'll call my API here, basically.
Okay.
What will be the function will be to handle my API call, or I can write it directly in the use effect.
Okay. And suppose if you want to define that call API upon the condition, like there is a state we have defined, the state value when it's changed to true, then I need to call the API. So how can I modify that array, that use effect thing? Yeah.
So I'll take the same use effect and I'll pass that state variable. For now, as I'll take an example of loading pagination, very common example.
Yeah.
Only if page changes or a state variable changes, only then another call will happen. So I'll pass that variable inside my use effect array. So sorry for the spelling.
Yeah,
I'm
no
bad with
issue.
the spelling.
No issue,
So
no issue.
whenever this variable will change, this use effect will to recall the API.
Yeah. Okay. About the spelling, JavaScript will correct you if there any variable name missing. Okay, you can write variable as a this spelling. There is no issue, but you need to create or add the state with this variable name only. This will work.
Right.
Yeah, there is no any spelling issue in that JavaScript or any programming language. You declare the variable name, it is okay. Okay, no issue. Okay, let's talk about the states. So why we are using the state over JavaScript variables? Because we have let, where, const already. We have also array, object. There is a multi data type we have. Okay, and there is a no restriction of use that data type to any of value, right? So why we have states?
Because of the something, there's a React has reconciliation. React has its own way of observing the variables. If you React will not throw any error if you will use your normal JavaScript like syntax or JavaScript variable, but it will not get an idea if that variable has changed and then to render it accordingly.
Okay.
So that is why because of the reconciliation process, the normal JavaScript variable will not trigger the reconciliation process. That's why it is not recommended to use a normal JavaScript functions.
Okay.
Data type, sorry.
Data types. Yeah, right. So it's the reason. Okay, that's good. So what is the syntax of state and what's exactly that? It is an object or array. What's that?
So
because
use
it's
state,
a construct of two or more things, right? Yeah.
So I'll try to write that. Data from a data.
So suppose you want to create an incremental counter and you need to define the state for that. First state for that.
So what I can do, use state is a function. It returns us an array with two things. Which first is the actual value that we will use, and another is a setter function, you can say, which will be used to change that value. And here we can pass, and you can pass an initial value to use state, so it will know how to use that. So here I have written a syntax. So I have already assigned that 1 to this data variable. So initially data will be equal to 1, and I can change or increment, decrement this value with the help of set. I have to write data.
Okay.
Set data function.
Yeah, Abhishek, you need to work on spellings too. Yeah, right.
Definitely.
Yes, it's
I'm
now
very bad with
calling
this
set
spelling.
date. So the spelling mistake is okay, but when you are writing a spelling which is make the different meaning of that, so that will confuse the person. Okay,
Right.
not an issue. Okay, so this is the way to create a state. Okay,
Right.
yeah, right. So if I want to change that state of that variable, okay, so how can I change that? We can use set data function on click of any button, so it will work.
Yeah, it will work. If I try to write down the syntax, you can call on click, and you can pass that a callback function to that on click, and you can change set data there. Either you can increment or decrement accordingly.
Okay, so I have shared the same line which you have shared with the different data type. It will work.
Okay. Yeah, let will work. There won't be any problem.
Okay, so
Just-
what's the difference between them? Why we have not using let? Because have you read any library of React.js or examples or any code, they will by default use the const variable. They are not changing the let or where or something. So why?
Because we have to we don't want our data to get re-initialized. With that let it will happen, like if some intern or some by mistakenly we are using this data variable at a lot of places in our application, a very application, but by mistake if someone rewrites it or reassigns it, it will hamper the entire application. So to avoid that, you can mutate that value, but we don't want to initialize it.
Yeah, right. That is the reason. That's why we can't use let in that. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about the components, right? So about the components, we have like functional component, class component, you have already mentioned. Okay, so what is the life cycle of that? Like there is a life cycle of particular component, right? We need to get the data, add the data, fetch things. So like what is the complete life cycle of any class component, functional component, you can explain?
So lifecycle methods were majorly part of class-based component. Component used to get mount, it used to get updated, and the component used to get it will unmount. So these were the three majorly lifecycle methods. And what kind of changes we want to do on our application, on our single page application, it was defined inside this lifecycle.
Okay.
So like for the component will unmount was something that we use with the use effect return function. When your component is unmounting, what do you want? If you have some event listeners attached, you want to remove that to save memory. And what happens when your component mounts? So three lifecycle methods were there to handle different stages of your application, what to do when kind of thing.
Okay. So there is a props in React.js, right?
Right.
Okay. So can we change the value of props?
Prop, it is a way to pass data, and as React is a unit in React, data flows in a unidirectional way. So from parent to child.
Yeah, right.
So if data which you have passed from parent to child, you can change it in the child component, but vice versa is not true. You cannot directly.
Yeah.
There's a way to change it, but you cannot directly mutate the parent's props or a parent's value.
Okay.
Prop is just a value, you can change it, right?
Okay. So is there any way to change that child to parent, or what is prop drilling, if you can mention?
So prop drilling is something when you have multiple components, like a parent component, then followed by a parent component, and then you have child component. So if you want to send something from your grandparent to a child, so you have to pass data from each component one by one, from grandparent to parent and then to child.
Okay, that's the prop drilling thing.
That's
right?
prop drilling.
Okay.
But if you want to change data from grandparent or data from a child component to a grandparent,
right?
You have to lift that state up.
Yeah.
So this is a way, lifting the state up is a way in which we can do that.
Okay, is there any way to avoid the prop drilling thing?
There are now multiple ways. The React gives you an option to use context API. You can use a third-party library, React Redux. We have Justend.
Okay.
To have a centralized storage, a single source of truth, which is commonly in context of React. We can use that.
Okay. So like there is a context API you mentioned. Okay.
Right.
So is there any hook to maintain that context API?
We have use context and use provider majorly. Use provider is something which we tell our application that we have made a store. We will give all data to our complete app, and use context we can use where we want to use that data.
Okay.
From that store.
Okay. And what is event propagation?
Event propagation is it is a phenomenon in JavaScript. Whenever you click to, whenever an event happens on any of the element, it propagates. It also gets adjusted to its parent and also registered to its grandparent.
Okay.
So this is event propagation.
Okay. So Abhishek, suppose I want to get the data of any HTML tag in React.js, right? So what is the syntax for that?
I can use useref. What I can do, useref has a property current.
What is useref actually?
Useref is a hook which is provided by a React. Like we have document.getElement by ID in JavaScript, normal JavaScript, but we don't have something like in React. So document.getElement by ID or tag name is equivalent of using using useref. You can initialize useref to none, and they can set a reference to any of the input, and then reference variable will have, it is an object which has current value. So with the help of that current, you can get the value, or you can change anything, any style, or you have to get the value, you can use it.
Okay. So like there is a actually the based on virtual DOM question. Okay. So why we are manipulating virtual DOM or using virtual DOM with the React.js? Because we can change the UI on the web page without refreshing the page with the Ajax and jQuery, right?
Right.
jQuery is also a library of JavaScript which is written on JavaScript, right? So why we are using React over jQuery and Ajax?
So what happens when you have a very big application, if you talk in the context of Flipkart or Amazon, it is a very big application. You have some very deeply nested component. So whenever you will try to change one component, your entire application gets refreshed. The painting part, the repaint of the applications happen. So to optimize, to avoid this computation, what I can say, React developers came with the idea of having a virtual DOM and to only change what node element or what DOM element needs to be changed. Jitna zarurat like kind of thing, what needs to get changed only gets changed, and none of them rest others no need to re-render or repaint on the browser.
Okay. So virtual DOM, how much time it will take to impact on real DOM? Like we are maintaining the virtual DOM and real DOM both in the application, in the React application also. So how it will impact to the real DOM?
Well, I believe they are using some kind of a graph implementation. I'm not sure about the actual implementation. I'm missing the name, right? But it is based on a graph and it takes like O of n cube time complexity.
Okay.
But there are a lot of optimization techniques in between, so it gets refreshed very quickly.
Okay. Okay.
User don't get a chance to see whether it is a loading or a hampering. It gets changed very quickly in
a way to change the real DOM, right? Yeah. Okay. So there is a testing also, like test cases we can write in JavaScript, right? Or sorry, React.js and JavaScript both. So is there any library you used for that?
I have still not got a chance to write the actual test cases, but I know that we use Jest for JavaScript. We have Mocha for JavaScript, but in React we have React testing libraries where we can test the components, whether it is loading correctly, the styles are okay or not, the input and the buttons element are working as expected, they are changing the DOM. We can mock that.
Okay. So Abhishek, there is a higher order function and pure functions, right? Yeah. What's the difference between them, and is there any example you can give?
Sure. So pure and impure functions, I'll give an example. Pure functions are something which if you give them a set of inputs, it will always return the same value. Like if I have a function to calculate sum of two values, if I'll pass the same argument to like I have a sum function which takes two arguments a and b and it returns the sum of that. So like I'm passing 2 and 2 for both values, it will always return 4 to me. So this is an example of pure function. But if I have a function which gives me a random number, if I'm using mat.random, so this is a function, is an impure function, because every time it will get called, it will give me some different value.
Okay. Okay, this is the nature of function. Yeah,
these are pure functions and
okay. And what is higher order functions?
Higher order functions, the same thing. When you are passing a function to another function and you're returning a function from another function. Like map is a higher order function. It takes a callback function, and you can also use you can combine some method which will manipulate the string. Like I can create a function which takes a function and it will return me a function.
So it is you don't need think anything like it looks like a closure thing. Like we are also defining the function into the function, and they will get the value of that. So it is look like that same, right? Which are higher order functions. Okay. Okay. There is a controlled function also, right?
I have not heard of the controlled functions.
Okay. So there is a controlled functions in React.js actually, controlled and uncontrolled both of functions. Okay. So okay, we will talk about this. No issue. Yeah. Okay. So let's move to the other question. Like in a React.js, if you want to load any application, any API. Okay. So for the API, what you will use? The fetch, or you will use any third-party library to load an API?
I can use Axios.
Okay.
The syntax is little bit easier, but if I don't want any dependency on any third-party library,
right?
So I can use the async await and the fetch function.
Yeah. By that you can also call the API. Okay.
Right.
So Axios always return promise
I have not exactly worked with the Axios. Axios not written the prompt, it returns you the complete data from what I have observed, and then you can directly use that data object.
Okay, so that means if you want to return the promise from the API call or from the function, so you need to use the async await and fetch function, right? Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Let's write that. Okay. So there is a two different types of read, or you can say list the API data. Like if it's an array, there is a map or for each. What's the difference between them?
So both of them are a higher order functions, and we use them to render the list, but map is mostly used. Both of them were introduced in ES6. You can use map, but what you cannot control for each. You cannot control for each. Once it has initialized or start iterating over an array, it will completely iterate. But the same is not true with the map. You have a little control over the map.
Yes,
So
that's
you
an
have no
example.
control.
That's an example of controlled and uncontrolled functions.
Okay, right.
Yeah, right. You just mentioned this is controlled and this is uncontrolled, right? Okay. So, okay, what is the key in React?
So we pass a prop, like if you are rendering a list of items in your DOM on your application. So whenever one of them will change, key is a way to tell React keep a track of all the items. If you will not pass the key prop to the item, React will not know, or it will get confused what needs to be changed. So key is a way to keep a track of the data. React uses it internally to keep track of the data.
Okay, that's the working of key, right? Okay, okay. Okay, so what is the clickjacking in the JavaScript?
So clickjacking is a term which is referred to hijackers. It used trying to breach the application by making any fake input or button over your application's button. So clickjacking is this technique of hacking or putting malicious code on the user interface. It's part of a web security.
Okay, okay. So suppose, Abhishek, there is an application you have created with React, and it will take a lots of like a library load or any other load on loading the application, right? So how you will optimize that?
So if my application is very resource heavy in terms of images, I'll try to get the images from CDN. So I can use some caching techniques to minimize the resource load or to minimize the network calls. So I'll use caching, I'll use CDN on the front end to minimize the time in which application gets loaded.
Okay. So is there any possible chance, like when you create an application, with React.js, and you want to store their data while they have just launched, and you want to get the user data like location, right, and their city, like this is a part of also a location, and there is IP address, there is a MAC address. So how you will do it? Is there any way to get it in the JavaScript or React.js?
Well, we have geolocation API. Geo API is in JavaScript, but we need to get user consent. We get a small prop-up that the application wants to know your location, wants to access your mic or any other hardware. So with the help of Geo API, geolocation API, we can do that.
Okay. And for the IP address or MAC address of device?
I'm not sure about that, but I believe there is a way. There are methods
because
to do that.
This is required for a application which is a big application. Then the user wants by which server my application is loaded, access. Like it is not about the Flipkart or any Amazon thing, because they are about the customer reach. But when there is a software or any kind of CMS and CRM, so they will need the location and also that MAC address and IP address. So that's required for that. Okay, not an issue. Okay, Akshay, that's from my side. Is there any question you want to ask?
Thank you for calling me out for this, giving me this opportunity to appear in the mock interview, and I would love to know your experience at your current company and how you growed. There's a story behind, and I've read that story of yours from being gone on a long track of journey in a software journey. So if you would like to share some tips for me.
Yeah. Okay. So about that JavaScript, I can say like it's very good. You are in JavaScript, yeah? And you need to explore in the advanced JavaScript things like array destructuring you can use, okay, and there is a arrow function, anonymous function. You can try or practice more with that coding questions, okay. And also when it's about the core concepts of JavaScript, right? So how they will work, what is the exact return types, and what is the value we have when we add some values, like we can use any two fixed function or any values to get the needful output, okay. That is about the JavaScript thing. And about the React, you are good at it, but there is a suggestion, need to explore more libraries. You can use Axios and more libraries you can include in your application. And as I asked about the Jest API, you can also include the Jest test case library, because it's required for a MNC company and the big companies, right? So they are the thing, like there is a test coverage when you run your application in your GitHub, any system version control thing. So they are required the test case coverage for that function you have write in your JavaScript code or in a React.js application. Yeah, that's from my side.
Thank you, sir.